On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
All right, everybody, I'm here with Luis Cervantes of the LA Angels organization. Luis, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Chris, for having me on. I'm a father of a 3-year-old boy, my husband, and I'm a strength conditioning coach. I grew up in Colorado, in the Colorado Springs, lived there for about 7 years. And in Colorado Springs, there was a lot of resources there for me. There's the NCAA headquarters, there was the Olympic Training Center, the United States Air Force Academy. There were some colleges, some private facilities. So really able to get a lot of strength conditioning stuff there in that area. Um, and I got offered an opportunity with Colorado Rockies in 2019. I accepted that, was there until 2021. Had a little bit of a bump, in 2020 when COVID happened. So during 2020, I was at Regis University for a little bit, just continuing my studies and whatnot while baseball went back on. And then got offered a position with the LA Angels at the end of 2021 season. So that's pretty much who I am.
So you've been with the Angels since 2021. What levels have you been at there, and where are you currently now?
With the Angels, when I got hired in 2021, I got hired for the high position. So I was with high for 2022 and 23. And then at the end of the 2023 season, I went to the Arizona Complex League, 24 and 25. And that's mostly where I've been at. Went a little bit to AAA to cover for the AAA strength coach at the end of 23. And then during 24 and 25, I also went there to cover for the strength coach during his vacation, just because I was the only one in the staff at the time that had experience at that affiliate.
Gotcha. And now you're in the ACL, so you're in Arizona probably year round would be my guess. Are you doing rehab and stuff like that too, or are you strictly with the Complex League team?
No, we have a rehab strength conditioning coach who's here all year round. I live in Arizona. I live in Mesa, like 20 minutes away from the complex. So it helps me out because of my family and stuff. I'm able to see my boy every day and whatnot. But yeah, I'm here all year round, and I'm mostly strictly with the Arizona Complex League. My responsibilities, I'll go and oversee a little bit of the DR complex. I was a lot more involved in that responsibility role at 2024, but this year, 2025, I was a lot more hands-on with just Arizona Complex League. And obviously with like everyone there, I'll help out here and there during like the draft camps, and then I'll draft as free agents on all the moving parts we have. But my main priority is the Arizona Complex League team.
Gotcha. One thing I want to note before we move on, the way you presented yourself as father, then husband, then strength coach,
Yeah.
was not lost on me. When I was in baseball, I was strength coach, then husband, and then everything else.
Yeah.
And so it's really like admirable of you to present yourself that way. And I think sometimes we get trapped in this like, I am a strength coach, and it becomes your identity, and like pro ball becomes your identity. And it kind of becomes a negative thing. So kudos to you for kind of acknowledging that. And I would assume that was on purpose for you, and kind of having your priorities in check.
Yeah, well, it's funny because um, I said it and then I thought about it, and like organically that's what came out, but it's not like, that's the order, right? If I were to think about the order, it's almost like I would say I'm a husband first, then a father, just because my wife is, she's a champion, trying to helps me out a lot. It's very supportive in everything that we do. Baseball wise, it's crazy. So you really need to have a good partner.
Yeah, I agree. The support thing is really good. And like I said, I always identified myself as strength coach, professional baseball. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And to your point, like having support, like thankfully my wife stuck around with me being like, all right, eventually he'll come to his senses and realize like, hey, I'm here, I'm kind of important, please,
Yeah.
show me some equal love and support. And I'm very thankful for her. But again, to your point, like having that support around you is just super, super important in professional baseball, especially just with the schedule, with the chaos. And, even being in the ACL, like you said, you get to see your boy every day, but that doesn't mean the schedule is easy. You know what I mean? The days
No.
are
Yeah.
still really long. There are some travels within Arizona, I'm sure. Like there's probably weekends that you're there. Like it's still not a cakewalk to be at the complex.
No, you gotta show up, and as a strength coach, at least with the Angels, it's you have to be there first, and you don't have to be there first, but it's really you're first one there and you're last one to leave, and it's almost frowned upon not to do that. And obviously, I'm there, I'm getting my work done and whatnot, but sometimes I want to be able to leave a little bit earlier so I can come home and see my kid before he goes put down for bed or whatever, just to see him a little bit more than 2 hours a day or whatever. So it is hard, but I think you juggle the life, and she understands. And I mean, it works out, especially because the off season, you have so much time. So you grind during the season, but then you earn that off season where you have a little bit more relaxing time with your family. Get to see them all day.
For sure. Do you guys play night games in the ACL or do you play day games?
No, we play night games. So we'll play day games up until the ACL season starts. About like a week out or a couple days out, we'll switch to night games, and we'll have games starting like at 6 p.m. And then during the season, the games are at 6 p.m. Besides Saturdays, they start at 11 a.m. So we'll have our day start about around 10 or 11 a.m. Go out throughout the day, and then have the games at 6. They end at 8 or excuse me, yeah, they end at 8 or 9. And then on Saturdays, it's a quick turnaround when you come in, have a quick practice, or sometimes a show and go, usually not never, and then usually never, and then have a game at 11.
Is that a heat related thing? Like just
Yeah,
Arizona's so hot during the day. Yeah, I can't imagine being out there in the middle of the day. It's like 120 trying to play baseball. It's ridiculous.
it's literally 120 something. And yeah, I mean, when you're what I really needed to get used to was when it's pitch black and it's 9 o'clock and it's still like 100 degrees and you can feel
Yes.
the hot air and you're just getting air fried. It's like the thing you got to get used to.
When I worked in the minor leagues, I lived out here in AZ, but I was only here in the off season. So I was here like October to, late January, early February. And that time of year in Arizona is beautiful. The weather is
Yeah.
amazing. And, when the sun goes down, I'd go sit outside on the patio or whatever and really enjoy it. It's kind of cool. And then now being in Arizona full time, I had my first summer, not this last summer, but the summer before. And same thing. I'd be like, oh, it's dark out. I can go sit outside by the pool and just kind of
Yeah.
hang out. And it's still 100+ degrees out. I'm sweating at 9:30. I'm staying inside. So
Yeah.
that definitely was like an acclimation for me. And then, like I said, thinking about trying to play baseball and that, and then all the other stuff, right? Like all the early work, all the practice, all the BP, all the bullpens, doing all of
Mhm.
that in the sun, and then also playing the game, just not a good recipe. So
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
pretty smart for night games.
With the Heat, you would think that it maybe would be possible to have some day games, or all of them being day games at 10 a.m. But I think I don't know. I guess just trying to mimic the full season schedules, so that way when players move up and stuff. I know in Florida it's always during the day, so
Mhm.
I'm not sure if there's like anything that shows that there's any sort of correlation between transitioning from FCL to the low A or double A, what have you, and then ACL transitioning to the other full time or full season affiliates
Yeah, it'd be
for
interesting to
performance.
look at. It'd be interesting
Yeah.
to look at for sure. So you've been in a couple orgs, you've been in baseball for quite a while now, but I want to know what your best professional baseball story is. Something that makes you laugh, something that makes you smile, something you're proud of. Just what stands out in your mind the most thus far?
So, I've been fortunate enough to work with two teams that won their championship at the ACL level with the Rockies. At 2021, we won it. We won the whole thing in ACL. And then this past year, 2025, we won the ACL championship with the Angels. And the Angels really sticks out to me just because it was recent, but also kind of what they did. to celebrate. So when we first made it to playoffs, the celebration, it was something I haven't experienced before in that manner. A bunch of champagne bottles spraying everyone, spraying your coworkers, your manager, the players, everyone spraying everyone, front office getting involved, and just that clubhouse and that field getting soaked. And it wasn't destroyed, but it was, it almost felt like I was doing something wrong. Like I was gonna get in trouble for opening so many champagne bottles and just spraying everyone with it. So that was pretty that stuck out to me. And then we went on throughout the playoffs, made it to the championship series. That week I had to go cover for the AAA strength coach. So I was in Salt Lake. I was in Oklahoma City, I mean, and I was watching the games online and seeing them win the whole thing, and then them celebrating on the computer and whatnot. That same night I got some calls, saying, we won it all. It's awesome, congratulations. So that was cool to them giving me some phone calls and making me be a part of that, even though I wasn't physically there. And on top of that, once I did fly back, a few days went by, we're at the complex. Someone from the front office starts telling everyone we got to go outside. It was like towards the end of the day. And he's telling everyone, go outside. He's very serious. Something's going to happen. I don't know what's going on. Everyone goes outside. As soon as I go outside in the agility field, there's like champagne bottles in a bucket. And I see that players start grabbing that, start spraying me down with champagne bottles and having like another little mini celebration just because I wasn't there a week ago. So I think like the going out of your way and those little things that really stuck and it core to me. And I mean, I felt it felt very memorable. So I think that's my professional baseball story. Just
That's
the way they
awesome,
went
dude.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome that they included you after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes of how they look at you, how they respect you, how they feel about you. So super cool,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. It was fun. It was really fun.
And I've always been like, I don't know, people like, oh, you don't really need to pop bottles in the minor leagues. Like,
Yeah.
I disagree. Like it doesn't matter what level you're at. One, it's hard to win, regardless of where you're at. Two, every level is professional athletes, so you need to celebrate. And three, like giving people a taste of winning in the minor leagues, like that doesn't go away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's memorable to everybody on that staff and all of those players. And it's like you could pop bottles here, but like maybe someday you get to pop bottles in the big leagues. And it's like I think that's a part of minor league development is just pushing winning. Obviously, you want to develop
Yeah.
players. You want guys to get bigger, faster, stronger, and better at baseball. But there is something to like having a winning culture that as those guys move up, like they know how to win baseball games.
Exactly. I think that's something you need to teaching how to win, teaching
Yeah,
how
I
to
agree.
perform during high pressure situations. And those high pressure situations sometimes only come about when you're in the playoffs or into those games that are really extremely important, and so I think once you do, there's something to be said about teaching how to win, but also to be said about how you go about celebrating and then how you flip the switch to move on the next day and get to work so that way you continue going. Because that's something I think that stuck out with me too, is the fact that we celebrated, we went crazy when we qualified for playoffs, but the next day we turned the page and we went back to work. And obviously it shows to a certain extent because we won it all. But, so I think it just really showed how professional we were about the whole situation. We celebrated, we went hard, but the next day we went back to work, got ready, and then we competed, and fortunately we won it all.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I think the other thing too is like some of those guys may never make it past rookie ball, right? Like that's the harsh reality of professional baseball. And so that may be like a highlight of baseball for them is winning and celebrating and being with their guys that, they talk about long after their baseball days. Obviously, you want everyone to succeed, you want everyone to move up, but the reality is like that just doesn't happen in baseball. So I just don't see any reason to not celebrate. And when I was in my first time celebrating was in the big leagues in 2021. And every year that we didn't win or we didn't get to celebrate was miserable for me. So it's like almost the opposite of like, all right, I'm tired of losing. Like, can we win something? And then when you finally get there, it's like, all right, this is awesome. Like, I think everybody should have the opportunity to do this regardless of what level.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's dive into your journey in professional baseball. So you've worked with a couple different orgs, you've worked at a couple different levels, different affiliates. Like, let's just kind of talk about some of the things you've seen throughout your time, and we'll just kind of see where it rolls. So I would say first question is just, you've worked for different orgs, right? Which not everybody has. Talk about some similarities and some differences between the two, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll start off with the similarities. With the Rockies, we trained athletes, use a lot of compound movements, nothing really too complicated or complex. Just plain bang, load up the bar, squat, hinge, push, pull, horizontal, vertical, load carries, and that's the same thing what we did with the Angels. Effective programming strategies, just things that are simple that we know that work, following the strength conditioning principles that that lasted the test of time. Nothing too out of the ordinary there. Differences, I would say the biggest difference is just the way that they use the performance technology. With the Rockies, the technology was very oriented and surrounded by force plates. Not a lot of other technologies besides just the force plates, but the way they implemented the force plates, the way they use the protocols to administer the tests, how often they used it, the consistency, how they let the data from the force plates influence their decisions, all that was different, or is different than how the Angels use the force plates. We use it, but it's not as the protocols aren't as standardized, let's say. They're not as consistent. And that's not necessarily a bad or good thing. It's just, I think the teams have different priorities on the performance technologies. The Angels, we use other performance technologies than just the force plates. We have Tindic to measure like maximal force, and like for rowing or for like obliques or just any sort of test that we think is valid and reliable. We'll use NOR boards. We'll use, like, we have a force frame, and these are all things that I know the Angels have. I'm not sure. I'm sure the Rockies may have things like this now. I just haven't been there for a while, but we have the 1080. We use inflows for hydration testing. So we have this equipment, but I would say we don't really let it influence our decisions as much as during my time with the Rockies, and how much they let the force plates influence their decisions. And I think it just comes down to like different levels of priority. What they prioritize, what they feel is valuable with their athletes. What they feel is a KPI and how they can affect that KPI. Different philosophies, really, of course. So that's mostly the biggest differences and similarities that I can really think about.
Were Trevor and Jaspy with the Rockies when you were there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so they're like super dialed in with their force plates over there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've gone and visited quite a few times. They're both friends of mine. I've talked to Trevor quite a bit on the podcast, specifically about force plates. But yeah, they're super dialed in to how they do things. So yeah, I could definitely see that being different. And I think to your point, like, one org versus the other is not good or bad. It's just what you prioritize and kind of how you're using the data and like the general philosophy of programming and influence and things like that. So it's not to say one is good, one is bad, one is right, one is wrong, one is better than the other. It's just there are different ways to get to an end goal. And I think that's kind of the point of why I ask you this, right? It's like there's 30 different organizations in baseball. They're all probably doing similar things, like you mentioned, with the complex movements, relatively like hammering the basics, all of that. But there are differences in philosophy and opinion and approach that still get guys to develop, to go to the big leagues, to perform in the big leagues, and to hopefully win ball games in the big leagues. So all of that is to say, I don't think there's one approach that is right or the best. It's just the best in your given situation, at least from my experience.
Yeah, yeah, and I've definitely learned a lot from both approaches, and to kind of mold what I think I would like to have the strength conditioning department handle certain things. When I have an opportunity to have that sort of leadership role, but it is complex, and at the end of the day, it's like as long as you skin the cat, it's fine. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but I guess sometimes it is more effective to skin the cat a certain way than another, and that's what we're all trying to figure out. What is that way?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. At the end of the day, we're all trying to figure out the best. I just don't think anyone will ever get there. And then again, what's the best for you when you're with the Angels might not be the best when you're with the Rockies, or the other way around. Or if you go to another org and you're talking about like potentially being in a leadership role to run a department, you may think you have an idea of how you want to do things, and then you hit a major roadblock with resources or with any number of things, and you're like, all right, well, I have to pivot again. That's kind of the name of the game in baseball, is just pivoting and adapting constantly.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've also worked at different levels and affiliates, so I want to kind of dive into that. We kind of talked about the ACL a little bit already, but just anything that you had like at an organization, let's say at the same organization, right? With the Angels, you said you've been in high A, you've been in the ACL, you've spent a little time in AAA, like seeing things at level to level within that org, and then also like level to level at the other org. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
there's probably, even if you were in high A in both orgs, it may look different just because of travel and teams and cities or whatever. So just kind of talk me through, some of the things that you saw at the complex versus being away from the complex.
Yeah. So when 2019, when I was with the Rockies, I was with the short season rookie affiliate. So dealing with a lot of young players, and definitely I would say that's very similar to being at the complex. The only difference is that you don't have all those moving parts that we talked about. You don't have the rehab players and the rehab strength coach, and then the coordinators that move back and forth or that travel and usually are in Arizona for longer periods of time because that's usually their home base. So that's it makes things a little bit clearer and a little bit more straightforward with the short season rookie. Now that that's over with and no longer a thing, then just the Arizona Complex League. There's players transition from rehab to, especially when they're doing return to play programs and they're in a long-term rehab like TJ or something, they usually go to the ACL roster, play a few games or whatnot before they get sent up to low A, high or whatnot. So having that constant communication with the rehab coach and everyone just to make sure that you're dialed for the player and making sure that everything's running smoothly. You have these draft the draft players that come in right after the season's over. That's 20 new players that you kind of have to onboard and get them used to the system and what it means to be a professional baseball player. You have non-drafted free agents that come in. You have players, at least at the Angels, we have players that get sent from high A, double A, what have you, down to the complex to use our resources because we have more performance technologies and just more resources in general that can get more data on them before they get sent back up if there's something they're struggling with down up there or just get sent down just to work on certain things. It might be for 2 days, 3 days, it may be for 2 or 3 months. So when those players are all that is going on and all those new players are coming in and being sent out, regardless if it's a new draft player or a guy from Triple who's coming down for 5 days to get some data, you just really need to be dialed on like communicating with everybody, coordinators, the rehab coach, the front office personnel, just making sure that everyone's on the same page with what the goals are. So that way, you just don't mess things up. Sometimes that's all it is, just not messing things up. Um, the Arizona Complex League with the players, they're usually younger, so usually a little less mature. So you got to be a little bit more on top of them, reminding them what they need to do, um, educating them, but really being hands on. You give these kids an inch and they take a mile. So, and sometimes it's hard to pull them back. So I think that's something that you really need that I really worked on in Arizona comparison to high A or when I was in AAA. or even, my stenches at a big league camp and stuff. It's like high A level maturity is just a little bit higher than Arizona, but they're still young players. So you may give them a little bit more, but not too much for the same reasons. And you may just not be as on top of them as you would with Arizona. They don't need that constant reminder. They just need different guidance. The way you speak to them is a little differently. And then AAA, I mean, it's even more mature. They're men with families, real life problems. So the way you speak to them, your presence around them, just the dialogue is different. I think globally, it's just like the soft skills of communication. You have to have the soft skills and the emotional intelligence to know your audience and what you're going to talk about. Like the conversations I have with you and the way I speak to you, Chris, is different. It's going to be a lot similar to how I speak to the AAA guys and the older guys than how I speak to the ACO guys. And it's not like I speak down on them. It's that they're that the conversations I have with them have to be more purposeful towards maybe their development and their reminding them of what they need to do, as opposed to just being more of a um, influential factor with the AAA and the older guys, where you're trying to persuade them on certain things instead of just telling them or barking orders at them. You sometimes have to bark orders at more at younger players.
All right, everybody, that's going to conclude part one of this two-part interview with Luis. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'm really appreciative that he was so open with me and willing to share about his experiences in two different organizations. It's kind of a unique situation to be in, and to be able to hear some of the similarities and differences between the two orgs was really cool. Additionally, he shared a lot of good information on emotional intelligence and effective communication, and how to know your audience so that you can best connect. 3 things that I took from Luis in this episode: learning how to perform in high pressure situations is a teachable skill. Carving out family time during the season is not always easy, but it is always worth it. And knowing your audience will help you to communicate more effectively. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.